Hello and welcome to another edition of Straight from the Training Ground, the podcast we share our love for the beautiful game and the people out in their communities doing beautiful things. This week, we're very honored and pleasure to have with us Coach Paul Marco, the Binghamton men's head soccer coach. He's been there for 23 seasons. He has been a part of 2 conference titles, 2 regular season titles, 10 trips to the conference semifinals. He's had 16 Scholar All-Americans. He's the 2007 American East Coach of the Year. He was also the head coach at West Virginia University for 5 years. Prior to Binghamton, he was also an assistant at West Virginia. He was also a United Soccer Coaches national staff coach for 20 years. He was the Big East Coach of the Year. And most recently, he has been inducted into the West Virginia Youth Soccer Hall of Fame. Coach Marco, thank you so much for taking a few minutes here to join us and talk about some soccer.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate it. You've been at Binghamton a long time. But before we get into that, I'd like to just hear, how did you first get involved with soccer when you were younger?
It's crazy because I didn't grow up playing. I didn't actually start playing until I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
My brother had played, and he was younger than me. He was a good soccer player. So that was probably my first time kicking a ball, was in the backyard playing around, with him and his friends. And then I had an uncle who was going to be one of the coaches at the high school. He was going to coach the JV team. So that summer I decided that I would try to play. We had always kind of played in the backyard, but never really played with a team. Believe it or not, I was a roller speed skater growing up. So I traveled the country competing on roller skates. And I was very fit. I was a fast runner. I enjoyed running. The sport is a running sport. You have to enjoy running and competing and sprinting. So, and then you add the soccer ball, and I fell in love. I started playing and never really stopped playing. I had quit many jobs so I could train a little bit more during my lifetime. So I've really enjoyed the game. I'm a student of the game still. I love watching, enjoy coaching. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, that leads me to my next question. So that's an amazing story. And you hear that, kids? It's never too late to start. How did you first get involved or become interested in coaching?
I think a lot of kids, a lot of people, the people who you hang out with influence your life. So your friend circle, your colleague circles. So when I first started and got into college, I was going to be, I wanted to be a crane operator / crane owner. My family had a small crane business, and I thought I was going to take that over. So I started in electrical engineering, and then I met this guy, Tom Rogan. He was the soccer coach at the university that I was at. I went to a community college first, and then I really wanted to be him. I switched my major from electrical engineering to pedagogy. I wanted to be a college professor. I thought I might teach physiology or something in college, or be a teacher of teachers. And, it wasn't until I got down to West Virginia. I played for Coach John McGrath, the late great. He passed away recently. He had a tremendous influence on me, not only as a soccer player, but I thought I would still be a college professor. I was meeting with one of my college professors at the time, and he asked me what I was going to be doing that night. I thought he meant that night. He's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go to Pizza House and get some pizza tonight. And he said, no. What are you going to do with your life? Because all you keep doing is talking about soccer. Why don't you go down and ask Coach McGrath if you could volunteer? And that's exactly what I did. I started as a volunteer coach at West Virginia for the guy that I had played with. And then I became his first assistant. And then when he retired, I replaced him and became the head coach at West Virginia. So hats off to John McGrath, Tom Rogan, and Uncle Norm. Those are probably my 3 biggest influences that really helped shape me as a coach and a coach of coaches.
Wow, that's amazing. Very cool. Very cool. I think it's always interesting to see how people, get into coaching and things like that. So very interesting. So in your early years as a coach, I know we all face different challenges. While you were at West Virginia and moving up the ranks, gaining experience, what were some of your early challenges as a coach back then?
I think, I do a lot of coaching education, and I think one of the things that you kind of have to find your own path. You have to find your own way. I think early on we tend to imitate people who we admire as coaches. I know that we had a staff coach that came over, um, Jack Detchen. He was an English FA coach. He came over and did some courses with us. And it was funny because I started to move like him, walk like him, talk like him. And I had such admiration for him. He was such a good coach of coaching the moment. He could freeze everybody and put them back in the exact positions where they should be for the moment. I had some wonderful influences like Shellis Heineman, Jeff Tipping, Jimmy Lennox, all of these guys. I was a sponge around. In fact, I still am. Whenever we get together, I try to be the one sitting at the table just listening.
Yeah.
But I think early challenges were to not only find your own way, but find kind of what works for you. I remember making so many mistakes my first couple of years as a coach. The way that I interacted with the players, I wanted it to be my way. I was kind of raised that way.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I've worked for some people who you said, kind of, you need to meet them where they're at. And I firmly believe that one of the things that I try to do is take players somewhere new every day. I try to do that physically with where we're traveling to when we're setting up our schedule. I want to try to go to some places that maybe kids haven't been to. I want to try to inspire them in sessions, kind of doing the same thing, but maybe it's done a little bit differently in this type of exercise, but they're still working on the same principles of the game. So it's a challenge. I think that I've tried to find new ways to say things and do things that are a little clearer and
Yeah.
concise. I think that's probably a problem as a young coach, how you communicate, trying to find the simplest way to get your point across. And if they don't understand what you're saying, it's not their fault. It's your fault. Say it differently or show them differently. So, yeah.
So then, and how have you adapted? Obviously, if you coached this long and you're still coaching, you've done an amazing job. But as we all know, things change. The world we live in has changed a lot. How kind of along those lines of what you just said with communication, how have you adapted, you feel, as a
Well, the
coach?
game, I mean, it's still the game, right? It's 22 players, one soccer ball. Their goal size hasn't changed. The laws of the game have changed. Our substitution this year has changed. So I think you have to adapt with the constraints that you're given and the freedom that you're given within the laws of the game. Um, I think that when I first was a player, there were no cell phones. In fact, the phone
Mhm.
at your house was attached to a cord. So I think I I have been able to adapt because I think I like technology. I like innovation. I like to try to expand my mind. I try to learn one thing new every day. I think that one of the things that right before COVID hit, we used to give these binders, a binder, a 3-ring binder that you would have that you would use for. This was at a recruiting event I was just at. We
Mhm.
used to give those out to give all of our team rules and philosophies and schedules. And right before COVID hit, I created an app where now everything is stored on the guy's phone. So instead of me telling them to put their phones away, I tell them to take their phones out. They kind of
Yeah.
look at me like I'm crazy when I ask them to take the phone out. But I do have some principles that have stayed true with me. I want, whoever's in our circle, I want us to do our best. I want us to do what's right. I want us to treat each other the way we would want to be treated. And everything else kind of falls out of that. So if I'm doing my best, I'm finding better ways to connect with the team, better ways to connect with my staff. I'm finding simpler ways to do things. Um, Knowing though that I might not know all the answers, I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to innovation. I'm open to others' expertise. So yeah,
Yeah, that's great. Never thought we'd probably be doing a podcast like this, over the
true,
over the internet
true.
on our phone. So it's amazing. Uh, so someone that's coached as long as you have, and you've been around so many amazing coaches and been very successful. What advice do you have to younger coaches right now?
Have an open mind. A parachute only works when it's opened. So keep that in mind. I would say that be a student of the game. Just when you think you have figured it out, it might expand your mind. And the way that we teach, You have to keep expanding what you know. It's not about what you tell the players what you know, but it is 100% about what you know. You might be teaching something that might limit their players, so try to keep scratching their minds with ways to embrace the innovation in the game, to embrace the laws of the game, and figure out what works for you. And then be willing to risk, be willing to fail. I when I teach some of the coaching courses, I like to always start with using a prop. I use a chair, and when you lean back in the chair and you're only on two legs, that's probably where you want to be as a soccer player and as a soccer coach. You don't want to be on all fours. You want to kind of get that sense, that feeling. And then, of course, as coaches, we need to let the players fail. We need to let them fall, and hopefully they don't hit their head too hard, but we need them to fail, because if you protect them, then they don't get to understand the feeling of loss, a feeling of failure, and then they become afraid of it. So you want them to get after that.
Do you feel like that's something that fear of failure has gotten a little worse the last several years, or being afraid to do those things?
Oh, for sure. I think, even as a parent, I have a dancer who graduated from college last year. She currently dances for the Washington Wizards in the NBA, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And when she was going on stage, I always remember, this one time she had forgotten a little bit of her routine and she just started making it up. She comes off in tears and she's like, "Dad, I forgot it." I'm like, I can't tell you forgot it. I think that if we were protecting her and telling her that she couldn't fail, and in that moment, maybe she would have froze and not done anything instead of making it up. So I think that there is this, parents like to protect their kids. It's a coach's first priority is the safety, well-being of the players, physically and mentally, emotionally. But with that comes some understanding that failure is part of their process in development, and failure, the only way that they're going to be able to self-reference. I think that's something that players struggle with right now, is being able to self-reference, to self-assess where I currently am, not relative to the room that you're playing in, not relative to the field that you're playing on, but relative to the game. And when you want to become a master at something in the game, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I agree, and I would agree with you in how things have changed. Absolutely, you've had a lot of great mentors. You mentioned a few of them a few minutes later, and some great coaches that you've learned from and been around. Um, what would you say is the best, one or two things that you learned from them as a coach?
Well, when you're sitting in the room and you think you know a lot and you realize quickly that you don't, you tend to get humbled. And
But
I
that's
would
a good.
think
I
that
think that's a good step, though. I think a lot of people, like you said about being open-minded, that's a great step, is to realize that you never have it figured out, right?
just when you think you do, someone's thrown you a curveball. I think I learned that as a youth baseball player. I struggled with the curve, probably why I got out. I think that body language is really important. I know that it's become more important in people discussing about it now. I learned body language in third grade when I was learning how to play the trumpet. There were three students and one teacher, and the guy on my right was excellent. He was so much better than me. Then I was kind of in the middle. The guy to the left, he never practiced. We would come in and he couldn't do what he did last week. And what happened was the teacher started walking to get closer to him, and the closer he got, the more the kid was backing up, and he kind of trips and falls, and his arm lands in a bunch of folding chairs, and he actually breaks his arm. And as this young third grader, what was I going to do? Well, I quit the trumpet that day. Like, I didn't go back. He's screaming, crying, and I learned later in life as I became an educator that, by this teacher just walking closer to him and getting louder scared him, and he had a little bit of fear, which is why he backed up. And of course, the teacher never thought he would break his arm. He was very um, emergency kind of kicks in, and
Yeah.
the mom comes screaming in, and he gets taken out. And he did keep playing the trumpet, but I did quit. I picked up the drums later in life. But I think that, Probably the best soccer lesson I learned was just when you think that you have said it or shown it the right way, it's these little tiny nuances that you drive home that help players perform. If you want to win the ball in the air, you probably need to jump first. If you don't jump first, you might probably lose the ball or lose that challenge in the air. And I think that some of those things stay true, but then there's other things where we're watching fullbacks become inverted. And I'm always one to try things. When I was first getting into coaching, everybody played in a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2. And now we start to see that a 3-5-2 has come back where people kind of went away from it for so long. So I think that things do come in cycles and circles, and
Yeah.
stay true to your beliefs in coaching. Have some things that you can stand behind and believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So now to a big topic. You've been at the college level for a long time. So NIL, the transfer portal, there's a new, the 28 person rule for, I believe, the Power Five conferences and stuff. There's a lot of changes.
Opting in or opting out.
Yeah. A lot
Yeah.
of challenges and changes. And you've been around this for a long time. And these recent changes, what are your thoughts on these things? Good, bad, otherwise. What's your opinion on this as a college coach?
I think I like where we're at right now. I like college uh, athletics. I think if you embrace it, I would prefer to have players play 4 years. I like the time we spend together and the development that they make as a person,
Yeah.
as people. I think that it's easier to develop the culture of the group um, when you have, guys who have been around you 3 and 4 years. It's difficult when you're only around each other for a year or two. However, I'm a junior college guy. I played in a junior college. I think college athletics at our level is becoming the back end of the junior colleges, kind of, where we're getting players for grad school or 1 or 2 years. Um,
Okay.
I believe we'll always take freshmen. This past year, we had, 3 or 4 freshmen on the team, and you get 5 or 6 transfers on the team. Um,
Okay.
and I think that one of the things that has helped in the game is the game is now better. I mean, the level of play of college soccer in all divisions, it's a higher level of a game right now. It's more sophisticated from a soccer standpoint, more technical, more tactical. I don't know if it's more physical. I think it's always Division 1 has always been like a horse race, a thoroughbred horse race. Fast, high press. Um,
Why do you think those improvements have happened? I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but
the players are older, more experienced.
because of that,
The
okay.
average age now is probably 21.
Gotcha.
You've got now. It was rare that you had a 24, 25-year-old, and now people have 25, 26-year-olds on their team.
Yeah.
Um, so the average age for Division 1 soccer has increased. The players are older, more mature, a better understanding of the game. We have more internationals now playing than ever. So that's been a change as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'll get you out of here. One last question, if you don't mind. You're very involved, as you said, also in education. You've helped a lot of coaches along the way. As a used to be the NSCAA, now it's the United Soccer Coaches as a staff coach. Is there anything you would like to see? If you could change anything about youth soccer right now in our country, is there anything that you would like to see be tweaked or changed? I know there's been some scuttle, the last few months about the age group thing, and they're going to keep that the same. But is there anything you would like to see change that you think would be better for the game at the youth levels?
I think that when you make change, one of the things I'm always curious about is how we help our best players. When you're writing your training sessions, you should be writing them to challenge your best players. You shouldn't be writing them for just the topic or the theme. You should be writing them with faces and spaces involved. And I think that the not best players on your team, they need your most support and help when you show up, because they're probably nervous in the hierarchy of the team. But what I could change globally, like nationally, I think that, I mean, I would really like to see us under one umbrella. I think that we have way too many leagues. I think that that's because of that, we have players traveling too much and playing not enough soccer. So they're in the car for 2.5 hours, and they then do something for 90 minutes or 2 hours, and then they travel back. So they're double the time in transportation that they are. It baffles me that kids in Baltimore can't play against kids in Baltimore, that they got to travel to Virginia and North Carolina to play league games. Yeah, I would like to see that. I think if all of the soccer powers to be put
be under one umbrella,
put soccer youth development first rather than their own agendas in their own pockets, I think that we would be really, really in a good place. We're in a good place. We're not in a great place right now, but we are in a good place. But to play in that league and just in the same town as you can't play against that other team because they're in a different league. Well, that just doesn't make sense for soccer. It might make sense for the leagues, but we're now driven by leagues rather than players. And for me, if you ask me, what would you put first? Player, team, club, league? I would put the player first. I would encourage players. When our own youth club that I work in, I've made calls for them to go and play in better environments than what we can create, and I'll continue to do that.
I couldn't agree more. And hopefully one day, I don't know, but that's a major problem in my opinion, getting everyone under one umbrella, and I think it would make everyone a little bit more organized.
Organized and so much easier to figure out where games are, when games are. You have one site that could control it all, and then we would just need to have layers.
Yeah.
I do think the other piece is, because of our pay-to-play model, winning is always going to be a factor if it's a pay-to-play model, because parents are competitive. The United States is a competitive environment. We thrive on competition. And because of that, the result will always be looked at differently. As soon as we said you would be rewarded for developing a player, the focus would then go more on the reward of developing a player, like it is in pretty much every country in the world except the U.S.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. Again, Paul Marco, the men's coach at Binghamton University.
Thank you. Take care. See everybody in Chicago.